should be live. Chat there we go. Chat's good. I forgot the page I was about to actually look up in relation to everything I was just doing. Oh well. I'm sure it'll come up. But of course, as the video says, today we're going to be talking a little bit about. I don't have my view counter on. I'm sad. But head coaching candidates: firing Greg Roman, firing John Harbaugh potentially at the end of the season, and head coaching candidates for the 2023 season, and who we'd like to see as the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, anyone that's watched my videos knows I've been a very big critic of John Harbaugh for many years now. It goes back even to, the year after we won the Super Bowl. It goes that far back. Oh, now I remember the stat. How many offensive coordinators under John Harbaugh? And I love how it changes everything. All right. So, yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit here. I'm going to put out a tweet as well. So, pardon me while I get my tweet out. Wrong app. I actually have some other stuff to put. That's for something else. This is. Did I just see we signed another wide receiver? I swear if we did. And we'll talk about that in another video. I'm sorry I don't have my YouTube count up for some reason. Let me see here. Go to my YouTube so I can get my link for Twitter. I apologize if there is anyone in the chat. Like I said, we're trying to get a link up. Share, copy link. Paste the link. Fire Harbaugh and Roman. We're discussing it live, as well as who I want as next coaches of Ravens. some hashtags in there. Hashtag Raven Flock. Really? Like, there's not. I don't even know if that's the right Ravens. Fire Roman might get me. Let's see here. I think that's good. Boom. All right, with that, I'm going to put it on YouTube actually so I can get a view count every once in a while since my browser attachments seem to be not working all of a sudden. All right. With that being said, though, we're gonna actually like officially get into this. So, of course, the last games have been atrocious. Everyone's talked about it. You know, we had backs averaging like 9 yards a carry, 7 yards a carry, and we just ran or passed it. We pass up field goals with the best kicker in field goal in NFL history. I've just never been a big fan of special teams coordinators becoming head coaches. Now, don't get it twisted. I think John Harbaugh is a great leader of men. He can establish a good, healthy locker room environment that focuses on good ethics and values. And, like I said, great leader of men. But it takes more than being just a great leader to also be a good football coach. Just like being a good manager and being a good leader can be separate as well. So, yes, John Harbaugh, they give him credit for the safety, the intentional safety for time, blah, 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 blah. But other than that, he has continually botched, and we've talked about it and shown that he's continuously botched time management situations for the Baltimore Ravens and misuse of timeouts. And something I've discussed a lot of times in comments, and we're going to reiterate here, is when do you hold your head coach accountable for the roster decisions? Like when you see players going other places and playing really well, or case in point, how many of our offensive coordinators have left to become head coaches? Same thing on the other side of the defense. As a successful manager, your people that you are raising up in your tree, your coaching, your management, should be advancing in their careers. If they're not advancing in their careers, it's either the system or you're not doing your job correctly. And that's what I've always been taught from leadership and management in my professional life. So with that being said, how many of these coaches have gone on and done well, and or have a lot of them been friend hires, someone that John Harbaugh knew through his college coaching tree, for like friends and acquaintances? And I just have never really liked any of his hires. I will admit, though, I was a fan of we brought in Keith Williams and, well, I'm sorry, the other one, Keith Williams and T. Higgins, two wide receiver and offensive pass specialists, basically, this past season, who, have been given a lot of credit. And we're actually going to go into that a little bit more with potential candidates for next year for the Baltimore Ravens, of course. So the Roman thing's obvious, of course. It's been atrocious. Every Ravens fan, there's no one like that. But, finally the Raven fans are starting to see kind of what I've been saying about Harbaugh for years now. because we become so stagnant and so complacent, in my opinion. And some of it's on Harbaugh, but also I believe it's you have a leader. You are responsible for everything your team does and fails to do. A good leader, when their team's not getting it done, says, "What have I done wrong?" Obviously, I need to change something because I'm not doing if my team is failing, there's usually something that I can do as a leader that they can't. It's my job to find that solution as a leader. And I feel like Harbaugh has consistently failed on that field or on that point. So we're going to talk about a few things here, and we're going to pull up some pages here. So I want to talk about one thing, though, before we. So here we've got an article talking about ranking the offensive coordinators under John Harbaugh. We've got 6 on the list here. Do any Ravens fans think these were great hires? What's Gary Kubiak up to? You think Greg Roman's going to be a head coach in the NFL next year? I'm pretty sure Cam Cameron went back to college. Jim Caldwell? Don't think he's doing too well right now. Mark Tresman? Gone. Marty Morningwig? I don't know where he went. So, with that being said, that's a lot of really bad hires. And this is a fact I break down for people all the time. So let's highlight this. How many offensive coordinators did Jake Cutler go through? So Jake Cutler went through 3 head coaches and 6 offensive coordinators in 8 years in Chicago. Wow, 6 offensive coordinators. That kind of sounds like the stat we just looked at, doesn't it? Well, let's take it a step further. Here's a 2017 article written about Joe Flacco. And of course, how many offensive coordinators do you think Joe Flacco had? Let's see if we can find it here. Flacco had 5 offensive coordinators over 5 seasons. I'm going to tell you right now, that's hard to do. That's hard. So again, also, why are we going through so many offensive coordinators? Why are these offensive coordinators not going on to better jobs? It's kind of hard to place the blame, and that's the thing that's really killed me, and why immediately I was on Harbaugh's case while other fans are just now getting there. Because how can you not take more responsibility for that as a head coach and fix the problem? And it's why I'm a very big vocal critic of why I want our next head coach to be a very proven or showing the ability to adapt as offensive coordinators as our next head coach. Because I feel like a lot of the teams that you see successful in the deep in the playoffs are either teams that have had a head coach or offensive coordinating system that basically is the head coaches and is modified slightly, brought new elements by younger offensive coordinators, and of course game called by. There's a few exceptions with the defensive coordinators, but usually these organizations like the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example, and Mike Tomlin, they have a good organization. And I've said this for years, and I've said this in the comments. It's easy to look like a good head coach when you have a Hall of Fame GM in front office running things. Now, I also understand Steve Biscotti a long time ago when there was discussion about firing John Harbaugh, and Harbaugh was on the hot seat. We like consistency, and I like that approach, and that's where I had to yield slightly to the owner, Steve Biscotti of the Baltimore Ravens, and agree. Okay, you are right. Stability is best. I can't say nothing. But of course, now we've watched this slowly decline, and while some of the blame, of course, lays on the offensive coordinator, because not only has the play calling been atrocious, the passing schemes have been atrocious. There's been Poor use of stack formations. I just, in general, I don't like the play calling concepts that I see generally. I feel like last 2 games I saw nothing but Cam Cameron on our as our offensive coordinator. Um, and not the good Cam Cameron either. But easy to look like a good head coach when you've got tons of good players coming in. So I tell this to people all the time. Joe Flacco went through a lot of offensive coordinators very quickly, just like Jay Cutler. But none of that blame went on Harbaugh. All of the blame went on Joe Flacco and the current offensive coordinators. Harbaugh still remains. And right now we're kind of seeing potentially, we're not sure, but Don Wink Martindale going to the New York Giants and having a pretty good year with I think subpar talent might have been more of a Harbaugh thing, or maybe it was the wake up call for Wink to, really adjust his system and not be that guy that, was painted. And we've seen some people trying to paint Harbaugh badly. Case in point, Derek Wolfe, but I'll be one of the first people. I've never been a huge fan of Derek Wolfe myself. I was excited when we first signed him, but I also immediately was like, hey, the injury history, guys, he's never available. Um, but yeah, so we went through a lot of offensive coordinators. So with that being said, I was always taught that you never present a problem to your leaders, to your management, without potential solutions. With that being said, sometimes you need help finding a solution, but in this case, we kind of know. So right here, we have an article written by Sports Illustrated, basically talking about the next potential head coaches for 2023, the candidates that might be available. And one of the things, though, I don't like in this article, they again talk about special teams. There's a backlog of great special teams coordinators. While, yes, special teams coordinators, I feel like can be great leaders of men. And I view special teams coordinators as this. They are like your backup. So imagine your 3 coaching positions as a 2-man game like beach volleyball or doubles in tennis. Your offensive coordinator and your defense coordinator, your starters. Your special teams coordinator should be coming in, running special teams, but also learning more. So for me, what I would like to see from a lot of special teams coordinators is basically when the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator leaves, the special teams coordinator transitioning to either way they like. So this brings in is good for a few reasons. They're familiar with the system, they're familiar with all the personnel, they're already well respected in the room. And if they're running special teams well and you think they'd be a good head coach, if they can continue the success, so again, if let's say the defense is doing well or doing bad, either way, if there is a change in let's say your defensive coordinator, he's either leaving for a job promotion or he's firing because he was bad. Either way, you need to either maintain the defense at a high level or you need to retool the defense, essentially. Either way, if the special teams coordinator steps into the defensive coordinator position and does whatever we just said, then I have a lot more faith in them to not only have a great locker room and pay attention to finer details sometimes, but also maintain a true identity on one side of the ball, is whichever one I truly want for my fan base. So I don't agree with special teams coordinators being head coaches immediately in the NFL. But every special teams coordinator is a little bit different. A lot of these guys have very extensive coaching histories, but we'll talk about that. So moving back to who we want as the next head coach, I'm going to tell you right off the rip, I'm looking for 2 people specifically on this list. And number 1 on the list starts right here. Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. As they talk about here, the Eagles offense has been great in terms of efficiency, the multifaceted approach. His colleagues say, as they talk about here, he's a mastermind at creating mismatches, and of course, the rosters have been trending in the right direction for quite some time. I really like what I've seen out of the Philadelphia offense, not only in the past with their ability to run the ball, but of course in what we've seen out of Jalen Hurts. Now, I like this for two reasons. Of course, Jalen Hurts to Lamar Jackson, there's of course you can see a lot of similarities there in their skill sets. So and what we've seen out of Jalen Hurts has been great. And as they talk about here, a lot of people don't realize Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator or part of instrumental in Justin Herbert's rookie season. Maybe he was the quarterback coach. I'm not 100% positive. Um, we'll go into that a little bit here in just a minute. But for my opinion, Shane Steichen is my first pick. 1A, I should say, for the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, of course, with that comes who's going to be the offensive coordinator. With that being said, a lot of times we see offensive coordinators like this potentially bring their quarterback coach with them to be their next offensive coordinator. Could we see that? Possibly, as you're going to see actually on this list, the quarterback coach for the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be on the potential candidate list for head coaching. So, of course, if he comes to Baltimore, has a successful season in Baltimore next year, his chance of catching a head coaching job in the following year skyrocket. Especially if he doesn't really think he's going to get chosen this year. Going down the list, not my 1B, but we've got D'Amico Ryans, defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator for the Broncos, not high there for me. Also, by the way, I am for giving McDonald another year with our defense. I think it's not fair this year, and I've seen pretty good stuff out of him. I think he's really trying and feeling the NFL and feeling his roster, and we'll get there. Of course, I've been critical in the early games of some of his defensive calls, but I think we've seen adaptation from him already. So with that on the list, we're actually going to be arriving weirdly. I did not expect myself to like this pick, but potentially there's a bug. I'm trying to get him if I catch him on stream for the win. But oh, we've got a few viewers. Thanks for dropping in, guys. Sorry, my view thing on my channel's not working. But so we're going to talk about my 1B for the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, and that's actually going to be Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. And if I'm not mistaken, a former BYU quarterback that didn't come into the NFL too long ago. Of course, he had supposedly a stellar round of interviews last year with the Jaguars, Broncos, Vikings, and Dolphins. And the real reason here is we have seen a lot out of Dallas's offense between Dak Prescott, the development of Dak Prescott, as well as Cooper Rush. When Dak went down earlier this season, we saw a good game planning out of the Dallas Cowboys. And, when I sat down and I saw him on the list, I was like, no way. And then as I started to analyze it more and think about it more, I was like, you know what? I think he would make a great fit, actually. Because, again, I'm looking for someone with a more identity for offense for our next head coach. Now, a lot of these guys might end up as the next head coach somewhere else. Average, I believe, is about 5 coaching positions per season. Last year, I believe we had 9, which was a outlier for the season. Looking at that, though, of course, I'm just going to quickly run over a few more things. Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator, Marcus Brady. I'm not going to go over this list too much because that's my 1AB in my opinion. I do want to find, though, Brian Callahan's got a lot of buzz going too, but I don't see a division opponent coming across the aisle there. Of course, Eagles could lose their offensive and defensive coordinator this season. We're looking for the quarterback coach for the Eagles. Offensive coordinator for the Packers on that list. Sorry, Grossi, by the way, if he moves on from you. We got Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs as well. Yeah, again, I don't agree with special teams coordinators becoming head coaches. Sorry. Josh McCown. Vrabel. Chargers. Anthony Weaver. I know he's on the list. Jamie Caldwell. Interesting. There it is. Brian Johnson. So for the offensive coordinator position, if Brian Johnson does not end up as the next offensive coordinator for the Eagles or a head coach, I could totally see him bringing Brian Johnson over with him. He was Dak Prescott's quarterback coach at Mississippi State, it talks about, and he was an offensive coordinator and QB coach at the University of Houston. And as we know, University of Houston is a spread offense and has put out some good passers. Casey Keenum, I think, used to throw for 5,000 yards in that system. So I would love to see basically Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, coming over with Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, because the Eagle front office and the Baltimore Ravens front office actually has a great relationship. We sent Timmy Jernigan over there to the Philadelphia Eagles, and we've just had a good relationship with that office. I believe quite a few Baltimore Ravens front office people ended up over with the Philadelphia Eagles. With that being said, though, offensive coordinator talking, there's two people that Baltimore brought in this past year that, of course, are on this list. And so we have Keith Williams here on the left and T. Martin. Sorry, I called him T. Higgins earlier. T. Martin on the right. And these could be potential internal candidates for the Baltimore Ravens to be the next offensive coordinators. Keith Williams was hired, as it says here, the pass game specialist, and T. Martin was the wide receiver coach. Now, these guys actually, we're going to talk about here on the Baltimore Ravens article, were actually really good wide receiver coaches. Martin has coached people such as Juju, Nelson Aguilar, Robert Woods, and Randall Cobb. Of course, Martin's son is Amari Rodgers, who was drafted by the Green Bay Packers. So that's a really cool connection there. Trying to catch that damn bug. Of course, Keith on the other side has coached Tyreek Williams, Sammy Watkins, and Devontae Adams. There's a reason we brought these guys in, and I think they've actually been really good at bringing Baltimore Ravens wide receivers along, minus the injuries, of course. And, of course, I don't think the Harbaugh has allowed for the wide receivers to really bring in the right guys. I swear, that bug's so bad. Sorry. With that, of course, with Kellen Moore, we have to talk about him, the quarterback coach for the Dallas Cowboys, and that would be Doug Nussmeyer. Sorry if I butchered that name. And they talk about here, he also tutored Jason Witten. I believe he used to be the tight end coach for the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of experience there. So could we see potentially, he's got 13 years coaching in the NCAA. Of course, he coached at Florida as offensive coordinator. He was part of Nick Saban's staff for a while and also Washington Huskies. So we've seen him bounce around a little bit. I'm not sure if I would see him in just a play caller in essence, basically running Kellen Moore's system. And I bring him up mostly just because we do see a long history in the NFL of offensive coordinators bringing along their quarterback coach if they're not basically the next man up in the current organization, or if they think, they might be better off going with them. So he's just being brought up more so for just the namesake of that. With that, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about, though, T. Martin and Keith Williams, if they have that play calling experience. Of course, T. Martin's got a little bit of experience, Volunteers and USC, so University of Tennessee and University of Southern California. He was criticized pretty heavily when he was the play caller at USC. Often, though, I believe, blamed it more so on the execution of younger players at USC. I believe Sam Darnold was out there at that time. So he has the pedigree of coaching the NFL wide receivers, but I'm not so sure on his play calling ability. He was questioned both at Tennessee and USC as well. Let's see if I can. Apologies, my computer is so slow. And as you can see, they're talking about here a little bit, struggling to make an impact. The wide receivers after Juju Smith-Schuster left. So as much as I talked about maybe seeing T. Martin move up to the offensive coordinator position, I'm not sure if we're going to see it. I would love to actually do a special talking and looking a little deeper into his actual offense that he tried to run at the University of SoCal and University of Tennessee. Now, looking up Keith Williams, I did come across a few different things here. So he was with the Nebraska Cornhuskers for a while, and then out in Cali, um, ran some pretty good offenses there. So with him, I see a little more of a good run game with a decent pass game. However, I came across some information about DUI. It was his third. That kind of swayed me a little bit away from the internal promotion here. I hate to be that person. I'm all about, people changing. They're going to talk about here, though, while he was in Cali, he also. So basically, I believe it was started somewhere in 2009. So in this time in Cali at San Jose City College and Fresno State, he had DUI problems. Moved to Nebraska, where he was the wide receiver coach. The wideouts flourished, yada, yada, but he got another DUI. So I love him, but at the same time, I'm wary of the buy, basically. Buyer beware. He might be good, but I don't see him moving up to offensive coordinator, also because I believe the last time he was an offensive coordinator was back in 2008 at San Jose City College. He was the offensive coordinator and the wide receiver coach. Maybe unless he's got the playbook of playbooks and he's about to break out on the scene, I do not see the Baltimore Ravens really promoting Keith Williams to the offensive coordinator position. Maybe in a few years he might have the opportunity, but it's a little sad to see. For all my viewers, again, thanks for dropping in, guys. I appreciate y'all. We're going to be going over a few other things here. Of course, we were talking about how many offensive coordinators the Baltimore Ravens have been through and how John Harbaugh has been taking no credit for his poor decisions in hiring, basically. And with that being said, we're looking for basically Steichman. Let's get these names right. My apologies again. We're looking for Shane Steichen. Where is the other one? My apologies. And Brian Johnson. Steichen Johnson. Or Kellen Moore. And his quarterback coach, Doug Nussmeyer, as the next head coach and offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm hoping here to do a little bit on Lamar Jackson as well. Basically, what is he worth is hopefully going to be my next video. And also, hopefully, a throw breakdown. Basically, talking about how, I've talked about his inconsistency with accuracy and, how I expect some of these throws, these gimme throws. So we're going to try to do a little video about that here in the next few hours. Really buckle down before the girlfriend gets home. For anyone that dropped in, thanks for dropping in, guys. I really appreciate it. Please leave me follow, or I'd really appreciate some comments. Tell me who your team is. We're trying to get some fantasy football going on for next year. And, of course, we're going to be trying to cover every Baltimore Ravens game here for the rest of the season. With that being said, D-Rave out for